Hello. I am currently very sick with some kind of flu, and I didn't get a chance to prepare a stream for Wednesday, so I'm gonna go on a little bit of a rant as an apology. This isn't a stream. This is just me and my microphone with the sock over it. So I wanna tell a story about Al Capone and Cody Wilson, and those are probably both names that you've heard of. Al Capone is, of course, one of the most famous criminals in American history, and he was arrested and sent to Alcatraz. If you're under the age of 18, you shouldn't be watching this, but uh, you're probably more familiar with something called Azkaban than Alcatraz, and Azkaban is based off of Alcatraz. So when you think of Alcatraz, think of Azkaban. It's basically the same thing, but instead of Dementors, it's the federal government, which is basically the same thing. If you want to guess why this famous criminal was arrested and sentenced to Azkaban, there's three options for you. I want you to guess. Is it one, moonshining, two, murder, or three, tax evasion? If you guess tax evasion, you're right. Al Capone, despite being one of the most famous criminals in American history, who was uh, a moonshiner, a murderer, probably committed a lot of other crimes indirectly, he was arrested and sentenced to prison on tax evasion. In fact, he was initially investigated by the federal government for tax evasion after claiming, with his own words, that he would be willing to pay taxes on his criminal earnings if they asked him to. And that launched a legal inquiry into his tax standing. He was sentenced to 11 years in prison, but he had syphilis when he arrived in Azkaban, and his mental health, like his brain, rotted out of his ears. Same thing that happened to Hitler, basically, and he died in prison for tax evasion. Now, how does this relate to a guy called Cody Wilson? Well, who is Cody Wilson? Cody Wilson is the owner of a website or a business called Defense Distributed. And Defense Distributed has a very interesting business. They sell 3D printers for unmarked firearms. And, well, basically, they sell a 3D printer. They give you the way to print them, the instructions for the printer for free. And they also sell some parts and stuff, but they got into a bit of a litigation issue with the Department of Defense, who claimed that, among other things, that their guns were illegal and the printing was illegal. They can't distribute their files and a bunch of other stuff because the government has an interest in making sure that people in the United States can't defend themselves from the dementors of the government. And on top of this, as he was dealing with this litigation with the Department of Defense, he set up another website called Patreon. Patreon was, of course, a free market alternative to Patreon, trying to hide its payment processor and get some money towards people who really needed it. This is a list of Patreonies. You got Andrew Anglin, who runs and edits the Daily Stormer. You got something called Radio Nordfront, Millennial Woes, Identity Europa, Richard Spencer, Greg Johnson, someone who doesn't exist, and Jazz Hands McFeels. All these people are, of course, very bad, and as a member of the tribe who loves the nation of Israel, I condemn this fully and completely. Now, that's two strikes. First, you have a lawsuit against the federal government. The second strike is you're running Patreon, and you're funneling money to these people the government does not like. So, naturally, Cody Wilson did not earn any favors amongst the government, and they were looking for any reason to get rid of him. Cody Wilson, while in Texas, signed up to a website for sugar daddies. He wanted to find a little thought to put his penis into, and he sure enough found one. He found a consenting woman on the internet who said that she was over the age of 18 to meet him and arrange for sex. However, she was under the age of 17, which in the state of Texas is sexual assault, statutory rape. No matter if she lied to you about her age, Doesn't matter how old you are relatively to her, nothing matters. If you have sex with a 16-year-old in the state of Texas, you are guilty of statutory rape, and it carries a maximum sentence of 20 years in prison. That is more than what Al Capone received for tax evasion. He was very quickly thrown up on the most wanted list as somebody guilty of sexual assault. And at the time, he was in Taiwan on a business trip. And sure enough, Taiwan, a part of the People's Republic of China, a country, neither country has extradition treaties with the United States, extradited Cody Wilson to the state of Texas, where he is awaiting trial today. And I've been thinking a lot about Cody Wilson because I did actually meet him. I was briefly on Patreon, and I hold the distinction of being the first person removed from Patreon because my special friend threatened to sue them if they didn't take me off. And as he was already in litigation with the Department of Defense, he didn't win a second lawsuit. So I hold the distinction of being the very first person thrown off of Patreon. But I did talk to Cody Wilson. Technically, I promised not to discuss my conversations with him, but he's in prison now, so I doubt he gives a fuck about this. But in general, he was a very well-meaning guy who really strongly believed in the free market and his libertarian ideas. He struck close to home with that. And he was a problem. He was a problem for people in a position of power who could fuck him over, and who did so. And that's why people ask me, like, why do you, as one of the most libertarian market of ideas people that I know, why do you tolerate China's regime? How do you tolerate Russia's regime? And I've read the Constitution of China, actually. I've read a translation of it, obviously. But in general, the Constitution of China says this: the people hold all the power. The organs of government represent the people. Therefore, the government holds all the power. So the rules of China are, quite simply, don't piss us off. Fine, I get it. Thanks for telling me to my face that that is the rule. In the United States, it pretends you have these freedoms. It pretends that you can do anything you want, you can say anything you want. And it's not true. They lie to your fucking face. And the moment you become a problem for the powers that be, they will Al Capone you. And Cody Wilson got Al fucking Caponed. And they'll keep doing it forever.